Welcome, everyone. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Joseph Lubin, co-founder of Ethereum and founder of Consensys. Hi, Joseph. So great to have you here.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you. We're here in Tel Aviv, Israel, as part of Consensys investor and community events. So welcome to Tel Aviv.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
Good. So my first question, I just want to talk to you about the amazing organization that Consensys and the team and yourself created. And I just want to ask a bunch of questions about decentralization organizations because I find it personally very inspiring. So the first is you guys have a term at Consensys called the Consensys Mesh. Could you tell us all about that?
Sure. So we consider ourselves an unusual kind of company. We formed about 3.5 years ago, about a year into the Ethereum project. And we formed to continue the vision of Ethereum, but we formed very early. We started as a venture production studio. The idea was to build MVPs, wrap companies around them, put them out for external investment, and grow that way. We got interest early on from companies and governments and central banks, and we had the need to educate people in our ecosystem, and we ended up doing different kinds of capital markets activities. So we basically have evolved as a very oddly shaped organization. We do a lot of things that you don't normally find together in a single organization. We also started with the thesis that the nature of business is evolving, that it doesn't make sense to try to build a big hierarchical top-down command and control monolith like a Microsoft, just because information is transmitted so easily and rapidly, expertise is shared, entrepreneurs are prevalent and they're formed inside of these companies. Look at Google, there are just so many entrepreneurs that leave and do their own thing, and they remain part of alumni, basically. And so we felt that nature of business is changing and that we should embrace that and create a context where entrepreneurs and serial entrepreneurs are attracted to Consensys, and that there's no better place in the world for them to do what they want to do. And so we have evolved as this mesh of different product projects and service circles like HR and legal and finance, etc., and regional offices. And we are attempting to be as decentralized as makes sense, and that's very decentralized using our technologies and the fact that we are in 30 countries at this point. And we are doing our best to be as flat and fluid as possible as an organism. So avoiding rigid hierarchy. Hierarchies are great for many different things. They're efficient for many things, but they're not so good for decision making. So you normally have the rich data and the situated awareness at the bottom of a hierarchy, and decision making as far away as possible from the people who's been making the decisions, probably. And so we do our best to have the decision makers be the people who are in the different projects, and given budget, they're really extremely autonomous. Yet we are building an ecosystem. We're building an ecosystem of Consensys products and services. We're building out the Ethereum ecosystem. We do a lot of infrastructure work, developer tools, etc. And we're building out the decentralization ecosystem, essentially Web 3.0, the decentralized World Wide Web. And so when you're doing that sort of thing, you need a lot of communication, collaboration, interoperation between different projects. So we work really hard on that sort of thing, even while we're trying to create this mesh of autonomous projects and companies.
I think that's amazing because, you want like-minded people because there are currently so few people, right? Maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands, but not so many people who totally get blockchain and decentralization and new governance models and stuff like that. Then you would want whoever is attracted and is kind of has that magnet to join Consensys. You want to leave them within the organization, but also have autonomous and like freedom of choice and everything to really realize your potential, right, in this ever dynamic ecosystem. So the way that you built the organization sounds as if, it was just a matter of you had to do it all on your own because there's no other organization that you can kind of say, okay, we want to be like that. You're actually spearheading this mega collaboration between entrepreneurs and like-minded people.
Yeah, that's fair. And we didn't really set out to build an oddly shaped company. It definitely emerged organically. I think there are actually millions of people on this planet at this point that understand the value propositions of the blockchain technology, essentially, at this point, and a lot of them are attracted to organizations like Consensys to work in the blockchain space, work at a company where everything is basically an experiment, and we're willing to iterate and evolve pretty rapidly.
I'm wondering, in this kind of decentralized organization, how do you personally stay in the know and prioritize, because you have so many projects going on and so many different divisions? How do you stay on top of things, or do you stay on top of things? I mean, is it part of your, or do you have lots of decentralized people who are kind of managing and reporting? I don't know. How does that work?
So it is very difficult. The growth of the company has been exponential. The incoming interest is exponential. The opportunities are growing exponentially. Um, and it's not just me experiencing that, it's virtually everybody in the company. We all have to reprioritize what we can pay attention to. We are all building systems, processes, larger teams in order for us to handle decision making and information gathering better. We do meet one another. We have about 850 people around the world. We do meet one another very regularly at different events. We had, I think, 550 or 80 people at our corporate retreat in Portugal. We had an event called Ethereum in New York a short while ago. Maybe 100 people came in from around the world, maybe a little more. We're in Israel now with 30 people. So there are lots of opportunities for us to spend good quality time together, work on stuff together, bond, establish shared understanding, shared language, so that when we use our communication tools like email and Slack and Quip, we hopefully understand each other a little bit better and don't misunderstand, misinterpret, jump to conclusions, although we actually do that a lot, but we're trying to reduce that as much as possible. We built a remote first company because we had to, because that's where there weren't a lot of people around the world doing this sort of thing 3.5 years ago. So we took them where we found them, and that's been a pattern ever since.
My dad always says that in a company's culture, it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. So it seems as like, in an experimental kind of mode, you guys are exploring and discovering and setting like new territories, and that's probably kind of the company culture that your vision kind of supports.
Yeah, and at Consensys, there are lots of opportunities to ask for forgiveness. there are a lot of passionate people, a lot of outspoken passionate people, and we practice stigmergy. Stigmergy is this phenomenon where collective intelligence identifies some sort of goal collectively, um, encodes it into the species in a sense, and just like ants push sand around and push little pieces of sugar around for the collective good of the organization, we see pieces of work and we push them forward in different ways. And so people are encouraged to just act. If they see something that should be done, do it. But if that thing that they want to do or that they think should be done impacts other people, other potential goals, then they should try to bring them into some sort of discussion about that, either to get help or to just let somebody know that something's going on. The company is called Consensys, and so we do try to form consensus amongst anybody who would be impacted by some event or some decision. Some of those impact the entire organization, and so we have town halls for that sort of thing. So, as I said before, there are lots of opportunities to ask for forgiveness at Consensys, and we're trying to see ourselves as an organism. We're trying to build immune systems into that organism. So we have a group that is helping us with communication protocols. So speaking, non-violent communication techniques, emotional intelligence techniques, different kinds of programs to improve us all as operators within the Consensys context, but just as people in general.
It sounds like an amazing opportunity to work at Consensys. You guys also have something called the Traditional Management Nullification Tools, TMNT. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so TMNT, and we use the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as the logo for it for now. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get away with that when it goes public, but it's a really cool project. We're sitting in a room that is labeled teal on the door. All the rooms in this facility are different colors. An organizational philosopher, theoretician named Ken Wilber defined different ways how humans can organize themselves for collective action. He labeled them from red to the color teal. Red is...
Thank God we're not sitting in the red room, Joe. We're in exactly the right colored room, right?
Yeah, exactly. The divine intelligence of the universe accidentally stuck us in this room. So a little bit amusing. And so a wolf pack has the red designation, and army and machine and family and organism are the next evolutions in how we get better and better as a collective intelligence. And so we at Consensys are trying to pattern ourselves as an organism. So all the people, ourselves, the people constitute the elements of organs. So those...
Are you the heart or the brain?
I'm part of the alignment team, so we haven't mapped it into human anatomy at this point. But we have product teams, service circles, and regional offices that are the various different organs. We've got feedback loops going on inside them, trying to figure out how we measure and how we apply measurement and goal setting, value creation, etc. And so it is essentially intended to be healthy at the cellular level, where all the people are, healthy at the organ level, and ideally emergently healthy at the organism.
And also in the ecosystem itself, right? Because you guys are so impactful in the blockchain and Ethereum ecosystem. So,
and you can think of Consensys as one of these organisms. So we have spun out a bunch of companies. They're still part of the Consensys mesh. Some of those companies are becoming hubs in their own right. We have what we call a hub and spoke system, where our different product teams are spokes to the Consensys hub. We have a team called Labs, which is working with all the different product teams to wrap them in APIs, and then to assign service level agreements to those APIs, so that you know what a team offers and you know under which terms you can get those services. We also see our marketing team and our HR team and our finance team, maybe our legal team, as potentially proto-spokes. They may evolve into businesses in their own right as we write software to enable them to do their job in this new decentralized context. And so we have this technology called open law that we're just starting to apply inside our organization. So you can write employment contracts, you can write NDAs, you can write service level agreements with these hybrid blockchain-based legally enforceable documents, agreements.
Smart contracts, which are employment
Yeah,
agreements.
smart contracts that are actually smart and contracts, unlike most smart contracts on the blockchain. And so these mechanisms enable agreements to be formed, agreements to be signed. You can sequence different actions. You can send money into a contract, escrow money in a contract, pay money out of the agreement, send data into a service level agreement, get paid out based on the data, based on the performance of that particular team. So using these mechanisms, using understanding that different companies that we've started and spun out are creating hubs in their own right, you can start to see this this mesh,
this
or
movement
web
emerging,
of
right?
different organizations.
Yeah, it's like a decentralized organization movement because I think that the blockchain brings a lot of collaboration, right? I don't like to talk about competition in the blockchain space because everyone has their own take or angle, and when you guys form this thing and you have all these projects spin out and become organisms of their own, then it becomes a society, right? It becomes an ecosystem, and then this company culture kind of has a ripple effect on the whole. So we really have an opportunity here to create the new society, right? It's like a superhuman
And there's
society.
nothing wrong with competition. Free
sure not.
markets are incredibly important. Identifying opportunities, incentivizing people um, to emerge services of value, products of value. Um, the interest and the beauty of this technology is that it enables entities who compete with one another or entities who don't even know one another to
Transfer
trust one
value.
another, to trust one another, to collaborate with one another in shared infrastructure. So we're moving from a world um, in which we usually build siloed information systems as a company, as a government, on old database technology, to a world in which sectors, industries, value chains like supply chains are the fundamental atomic construct of IT systems now. We've helped to build something called the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, which is north of 500 companies in many of the biggest companies in the world in many different industries: telecom, automotive, identity, healthcare, supply chain, law, etc. And these companies are getting together in working groups and figuring out what they want to do together, figuring out specifications for shared infrastructure, and eventually building shared infrastructure.
That is so inspirational. Seriously, it's amazing. So, just in regards to you have over I think 40, maybe 47 projects or over 40 projects that are.
Yeah, those are just visible ones on that piece of paper.
The ones that are we can talk about. But I'm wondering, when you're looking at all these projects, like you had the community day yesterday, and it was just overwhelming, to see all these projects, every protocol, everything that we can decentralize and kind of think about things from the ground up, right? That like everything is totally being invented as we speak. But I'm wondering, are there like pillars or certain topics that you can categorize and say, okay, these are the things that you think are most impactful at this stage for blockchain technology? Because I'm seeing all sorts of companies who are like, okay, we want to do a lottery in which it'll be decentralized. And, I feel that that's like a DApp that maybe we could have a few years from now. Maybe people would want to use it, but we still need the infrastructure and the ground building it, the infrastructure from the ground up. So are there like categories of projects that you guys look into and you say, okay, this is what we want to invest in and nurture and incubate?
Categories in a sense. It's still an immature space. We have lots of projects that are maturing rapidly. There are thousands of projects out in the world that are maturing rapidly. They are more building block like things. There's identity, self-sovereign identity, that's going to be extremely important. It's going to be the way we access services on protocol-based open platforms on the decentralized World Wide Web, Web 3.0, that we're
like
moving
Uport,
to. Like
right?
Uport self-sovereign identity, reputation systems, bounty systems, governance tools, accounting systems. So those are important components. They're really useful in their own right, but they're going to form components of more complex solutions. And other elements include standards for fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens and atomic swap mechanisms, decentralized exchanges, getting rid of counterparty risk, um, applying those same ideas to insurance industry, to lending, where instead of standing up an insurance company that offers products, we and others are trying to build open open networks, protocol based, so that anybody can put a parameterized insurance product on this protocol. Anybody can put a parameterized lending product on this protocol, and trying to build as many of these standards on Ethereum and just like push them down in the stack, create this shared infrastructure that we can all collaborate on and enable people to essentially get a lot of that for free and build products of use for different consumers and businesses, etc.
Yeah.
So it's sort of core components is a category in a sense. Protocol-based open platforms is a category, and you're going to see essentially any industry that wants more collaboration amongst competing actors to make use of these different technologies. So essentially, we're moving from a world in which we had monarchs, sovereigns, setting the rules, making the judgments,
And minting the gold tokens,
minting the gold,
coins,
and diluting the gold, and just getting away with whatever they wanted to get away with. So subjective governance to a world in which we have increasingly rule-based governance, but that rule-based governance in countries where it applies is usually subjectively determined, defined, and applied, executed. If we can take that rule-based way of organizing our society and we can move it from sort of subjective manual application of trust to automated guaranteed application of trust of these rule-based systems, then we will have a better foundation on which to layer all the technology that we built over thousands of years, and hopefully a more equitable, more decentralized, governed, better society.
Amazing. Amen to that. So let's just skip to the, you talked about minting coins and everything. In order to have that kind of system running, we talk about a lot about tokens, right? We need to have some sort of value transfer or collateral to that value transfer side, transfer energy or my brain power or whatnot, and then I want to get some sort of a token in order for the economy to kick in. So let's just talk about just for a minute about token generation events. And it seems like in 2017 everyone was talking about like utility tokens, present utility tokens. That was like the buzzword. And now in 2018 we're all kind of sitting and talking about security tokens, but really waiting to hear from the SEC and all sorts of other regulators in different jurisdictions. And I'm wondering, with all this going on, what is your take? Because in every project you guys also have a token. You have Token Foundry. You're building new economical models and new token models. So how do you see kind of the evolution of all this?
Yeah, so our Token Foundry team has helped some of our projects and third-party external projects to token launch themselves. We have issued investor tokens. One great example is a project called Braid. It's a movie that got into Tribeca, sold out at all its shows at the Tribeca Film Festival. So very exciting project. We essentially crowdfunded that.
You crowdfunded a movie?
Yeah, independent. Yeah.
And the people got tokens for that, and then they came
Yeah, so people got tokens for it. We raised $1.7 million. It's a security,
Okay.
an investor token. And it enables people to get 15% back on top of their investment.
So like the ending credits of the movie is like 5 minutes long of all the contributors.
Yeah, just addresses.
Yeah, just public keys, right?
Exactly. But more than just 15% on top of their principal, they're getting 30% of profits in perpetuity. So it's a cool system, and an experiment, like everything we do at this point. Um, uh, we have many different projects that are consumer utility tokens and would not be considered securities. Even in this context, at this point in time, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt um, that has been raised by regulators around the world. The SEC has made certain pronouncements about consumer tokens or utility tokens. Early statements were to the effect that all these tokens are probably securities. Um,
Yeah,
but
I think that's like that was nice to say, but I don't necessarily agree with that because I think that utility tokens are what we set out to do. We want to expand the credit. We want to have more tokens or more ways of collaborating as a society. And if you just limit it to security tokens, and you're just talking about the financial whatever upside. And when you're talking about utility tokens, you're talking about the way that we can actually collaborate. So I think that that's like
yeah, that
yeah.
makes perfect sense. Um, so the SEC has this dilemma. Other regulators around the world have a dilemma. The problem is that there are a lot of great projects. There are a lot of bad projects, a lot of fraudulent projects, a lot of projects that are selling what could and should be uh, good, well constructed consumer utility tokens, but they're selling them to investors in enormous quantities and quantities far greater than they could actually use. So they're really selling them as an investment. And so the SEC's opinion, from what we've discerned, is that those things constitute securities. So we have a framework that enables us to sell consumer utility tokens not in enormous quantities, not with discounts for large investors, not to investors. You essentially have to be a technically accredited token buyer. You have to answer questions. You have to demonstrate that you will use these tokens on these platforms. And so that's a good, clean way to uh, sell a token that represents some sort of access or consumption of a resource on these new business models, these network business model platforms.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with
and
that.
also, um, there there have been nefarious actors for thousands of years who take advantage of information asymmetries in order to defraud naive consumers. And so that's still going on in our space. I think that we will have the tools to make it a better situation. The global context of this technology, the low barrier to entry to running a token launch, has exacerbated that information asymmetry. But we can make use of those characteristics to self-regulate, to build systems that protect consumers better. So in the old context, you can register shares and sell them, set up a bucket shop, sell it to naive grandmothers via the telephone. That's a hard scheme to ferret out.
Mm-hmm.
In this world, in order to have a successful token launch, you have to publish a white paper, you have to get into Telegram or put a website up. We can find those things pretty easily,
Yeah.
no matter where they are in the world. We are creating a system that's sort of like an Edgar-like database for token launches. It's a project called TrueSet, and
Hmm.
so ideally, if you're going to be a legitimate token launch, you're going to have to register significant data in this database. So we will all be able to point to, is it in the database? If so, have people scrutinized that database and determined that the disclosures are accurate? And so we'll have this wisdom of the crowd dedicated to identifying these projects and analyzing these
Mm-hmm.
projects. We've got another project called Frontier that incentivizes professional analysts to share their work. So if you look at platforms like Reddit, where the people just tear apart white papers, there's a lot of energy out there that can be directed to cleaning up this space, and we certainly need bodies like the SEC to scare many projects straight, to create a context of um, concern, so that many different projects think twice and do their legal homework before releasing a token.
I think but the industry matured pretty quickly, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about like maybe 3 years into the fraudulent activity, and now you're seeing like better and more experienced teams and more serious investors, and everything
There's
is
a
kind
lot
of
of legal work being done for sure.
yeah.
We did about 7 months of legal work before selling the Ether token, and we're fully confident that it's a consumer utility token. It's required on the platform to pay for running programs, to pay for storage.
Yeah. We need to wrap up, so just a couple of questions. We in Israel like to talk about the Israel factor. So in Israel, we're considered the startup nation in traditional startup scene. And we've recently been acknowledged, at least here in Israel, we call ourselves the crypto or the blockchain nation. And I'm wondering, you're going to open an office in Tel Aviv. What is your vision or your strategy? And what are you on the look when you open a new branch somewhere in the world?
Yeah, so over the last 3.5 years, we've gone um, places that wanted us. So we spoke to people who wanted to learn about what we're doing. It's getting it's flipping a little bit. We were happy to speak to anybody who wanted to listen to this stuff. Now we're pretty overwhelmed with demand, and so we have done various different projects around the world in different nations with different central banks and governments, World Bank, etc. Um, but two places in the world feel a little bit similar to me. One is Israel because of the startup culture, because of the world class cybersecurity, cryptography, mathematics expertise. Um, the other place is Silicon Valley, where you have technologists who are building the systems that they believe uh, effectively structure the world. And so,
We want to challenge that.
yeah, so those two places, especially Silicon Valley, they Silicon Valley was slow to embrace blockchain because, of course, they know how to run the world based on Facebook and Google and other technologies.
In a
And,
centralized
they're
manner,
awesome
yeah.
technologies. They're the pinnacle of the Web 2.0 world. Um, and so, but some early adopters moved into the Bitcoin space, and they iterated in that space for a while, and I think they have now realized that it's a pretty narrow technology. It's really just one application of an infinitude of applications that you can build on blockchain. And so, um, in both those regions, we felt that the people there, the talent there was extreme, but also very sophisticated, and we should up our game, both at the Ethereum platform level and at the Consensys level, so that we could go into those places and answer all the questions, have respectable things to say in those particular situations. So a year ago, we formed an office in San Francisco. It's grown to about 50 people now. We're about to take a much bigger office and to really be a catalyst there. Ethereum is starting to catch fire there. It's being aided by GDPR. It's being aided by Cambridge Analytica, and lots of engineers are just wondering what they're doing with their lives. That business model of exploiting people's personal information may not last that long. It should evolve significantly.
It's an awakening times,
Exactly.
people are waking up to the fact that they need to take ownership over their lives, their identities, their choices, and we need to facilitate that with our technology, right?
Absolutely. Coming to Israel is really exciting to us because the talent here is tremendous. We want to build an R&D lab here, like many companies do, but we really want to build a full stack hub. Some of the earliest technologists in the Bitcoin space, some of the early colored coins, Mastercoin, etc. projects were formed here. Lazuz was an early
Mastercoin,
project.
we actually had a Mastercoin at our offices in AppCoin. We had them sit with us. So yeah, that's
Exactly. But now Ethereum's gaining quite a bit of traction here as people realize that it is a pretty powerful technology, a decentralized application platform. So full stack to us means we build an office that focuses on education through Consensys Academy. We hire lots of engineers, They can do consulting work. We we bring in projects into the mesh and incubate them. We invest in projects in the ecosystem.
So calling all
Lots of different
developers,
activities.
government actors, corporations, entrepreneurs, investors, all of them, all this ecosystem, we're calling them to come and hear about
elements
Consensys
of
and
human
collaborate.
society
Yeah,
are invited to come and join us in the decentralized future.
that's amen to that. So let's end on that note. Just I gotta ask you, you know, we're Jewish and you know the Israeli vibe. When are you coming back to Israel?
Um, I'm guessing I will be back here in a very small number of months to celebrate the opening of our office.
Oh, cool. So congratulations and thank you so much for coming here and for taking the time to speak with us. And it's very inspirational, and I hope for our audience also it's been an interesting and kind of eye-opening interview. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.